Hello, my friendos. It is good to see you all out here on this pop-up stream tonight. This will be a short one. I don't get to see Salty during the week most times, and she's getting ready to go to bed. I'm not sure if she'll make it to the stream, but I like to read to her bedtime stories if I can. So, we're setting this up as bedtime for Salty. And yeah. So I went into the chat earlier on Pyro Club and asked them what they wanted to hear tonight. But I limited them, of course, to fairy tales. And they chose Grimm's fairy tales. And in particular, chose the Red Cap. But I figure it's short enough that we could do two of them. Or three. We'll see how we go tonight. It's early. But this is bedtime stories, so everybody get out their pillows and their warm milk. Oh, Gran and V are playing Vimino games. What games are you guys playing? What have you been up to, Mr. Liam? How is school going? Are you in school this semester? I think you are. Oh, I gotta turn down. Our little Spotify was probably a little hot. You're done for a bit. Well, you should be streaming full time then, Liam. Why are you not? Sunhaven. That sounds nice. Sunhaven. Trying to think what I did today. Oh, I had a doctor's appointment. I need to settle into a new schedule, but soon. I had a doctor's appointment today where they told me I gained weight, and I told them, I don't like your fucking tone, doc. But there we were anyway. Something's wrong with... Yeah, see, why is that so big? That should be this big. There we go. I'm sure it's fixed now. Thanks. There we go. Still read it. But they also told me that my blood pressure was very good and my vitamin D levels were very good. This is old people shit. And then they told me I needed a colonoscopy, and I was like, no thank you. No thank you. But I was thinking of getting a little figurine of Waldo and hiding him in my colon. You know, just to have the doctor have something nice that he could find. You know, be like, oh, there's Waldo. Or maybe Carmen Sandiego. Or Dora. Soy Dora. Yeah. You know, maybe. I don't know. We could see. All right, so we've got Grimm's fairy stories all queued up tonight. Because they're bedtime stories, I will be reading them a little slower. Liam, I don't know if you noticed, but I have a new windscreen. It's very fancy. And I have new lights up here. And a new camera here. And everything's looking pretty nice. For a Dio stream, you'd think a Dio stream would be a mess. But it's not bad. They're not too bad, Gren? I don't think anything they have to like sedate you for is good. I told him, listen here, you don't need to sedate me. I'm tougher than your stupid scope. That's what I said. And they were like, I don't think you are, buddy. I have had to have one. My brother has to have one every year. Why? 360 colon scope. Pew pew. All right, so what do you guys think as we look at through some of the Grimm's fairy tales? I have only been, like Hansel and Gretel, of course, the Golden Goose, of course, Rumpelstiltskin, Snow White and Rose Red, the Frog Prince, Cinderella. I haven't read all these, though. I like Snow White and Rose Red. The chat before chose Little Red Cap. So we're going to start with that. And V, because you asked earlier, The Robber of Bridegroom. Was that there? I don't think I have that choice currently. I can get more, though. Because he has a genetic condition where his large intestine, small intestine, or stomach all grow polyps continuously. Yuck. Ugh. Your family's genetics are not best. They're suboptimal, Gren. They're suboptimal. From what I've known of you, they are suboptimal. Oh, you know what I didn't do? I didn't pull up my own chat so I can moderate myself. Although I do have my friendos here to help me moderate. We're going to figure out who we're going to raid into later, since it won't be too long here. Is the music at a proper level? I think it's close. All right, I got my mod view up. I need to start banning some of these people. Like they're bots. I think they be bots. Music is good. I mean, some of them are, but then both my grandparents lived to be 97. Okay. Yeah. Look at Liam. Look at what we got here, buddy. Oh, would you like to see the new project, Liam? I don't know if you saw this the other day. This is our new leather. This is upcycled, I should say, car leather, automobile leather, McLaren leather. This is authentic McLaren leather that's been upcycled. I've got a red stitch on this one, and it's not really McLaren leather. It's from GM. We'll pretend it's McLaren leather, though, because I know I wear a McLaren hat. Yeah, so that's our new dice bag. It's all lies. Yeah. Yeah, it's a lie. I lied a little. I think dice bag is a command. Hey, it is. Dio set some things up. All right, red caps is where we're starting. Little red cap. Ooh, look, Dio's stream has pictures this time. You can find all the things here at Project Gutenberg if you'd like them. There were a lot of options. I just took this one down tonight because I wanted some fairy tales to read. So we'll see. We're very close to getting our affiliate. I've always had enough followers. And so now we have enough people watching, so we're good to go there on average. I just have to get my hours up, and then I'll be an affiliate, so that allows me to start getting some emotes and people to subscribe, and then I'll be making millions as a full-time streamer, guys. You wait. Gonna be amazeballs. You just hold on. It's a foolproof plan. What could go wrong? Nothing. Nothing can go wrong. Nothing. Little Red Cap. I've never read this and I have no idea where it's going. We're going to see where it goes. Many years ago, there lived a dear little girl who was beloved by everyone who knew her. But her grandmother was so very fond of her that she never felt she could think and do enough to please this dear granddaughter. And she presented the little girl with a red silk cap, which suited her so well that she would never wear anything else, and so was called Little Red Cap. One day Redcap's mother said to her, "Come, Redcap, here's a nice piece of meat and a bottle of wine. Take these to your grandmother. She is weak and ailing, and they will do her good. Be there before she gets up. Go quietly and carefully." The grandmother lived far away in the wood, a long walk from the village, and as little Redcap came among the trees, she met a wolf. But she did not know what a wicked animal it was, and so she was not frightened at all. "Good morning, little Redcap," he said. "Thank you, Mr. Wolf," said she. "Where are you going so early, little Redcap?" "To my grandmother's," she answered. "And what are you carrying in the basket?" "Some wine and meat," she replied. "We baked the meat yesterday so that grandmother, who is very weak, might have a nice strengthening meal." "And where does your grandmother live?" asked the wolf. "Oh, quite 20 minutes' walk in the forest. The cottage stands under 3 great oak trees, and close by are some nut bushes by which you will know it at once." The wolf was thinking to himself, "She is a nice tender thing, and will taste better than the old woman. I must act cleverly, that I make a meal of both." Presently he came up again to little Redcap and said, "Just look at the beautiful flowers which grow around you. Why do you not look about you? I believe you don't hear how sweetly the birds are singing. You walk as if you were going to school. See how cheerful everything is about you and in the forest." And little Redcap opened her eyes, and when she saw how the sunbeams glanced and danced through the trees, and what bright flowers were blooming in her path, she thought, "If I take my grandmother a fresh nosegay, she'll be very much pleased. And it is so very early that I can even then get there in good time." And running into the forest, she looked about for flowers. But when she had once begun, she did not know how to leave off, and she kept going deeper and deeper amongst the trees, looking for some still more beautiful flower. The wolf, however, ran straight to the old grandmother and knocked at the door. "Who's there?" asked the old lady. "Only little Redcap, bringing you some meat and wine. Please open the door," answered the wolf. "Lift up the latch," cried the grandmother, "and I am much too ill to get up myself." So the wolf lifted the latch, and the door flew open, and without a word he jumped onto the bed and gobbled up the poor old lady, and then put her on her clothes, tied her nightcap over his head, got into bed, and drew the blankets over him. At this time Redcap was gathering flowers, and when she had picked as many as she could carry, she thought of her grandmother and hurried to the cottage. She wondered greatly to find the door open, and when she got into the room, she began to feel very ill and exclaimed, "How sad I feel! I wish I had not come today." Then she said, "Good morning," but received no reply. So she went up to the bed and drew back the curtains, and there lay her grandmother as she imagined, with the cap over her eyes, looking very fierce. "Oh, grandmother, what great ears you have," she said. "All the better to hear you with," was the reply. "And what great eyes you have." "All the better to see you with." "And what great hands you have." "All the better to touch you with." "But grandmother, you have very great teeth you have." "All the better to eat you with." And hardly the words were spoken when the wolf made a jump out of the bed and swallowed up old poor little Redcap also. As soon as the wolf had satisfied his hunger, he laid himself down again on the bed and went to sleep and snored very loudly. A huntsman passer-by overheard him. "How loudly that old woman snores! I mustn't see if there's anything the matter." He went into the cottage, and when he came to the bed, he saw the wolf sleeping in it. "What? Are you here, you old rascal? I've been looking for you," exclaimed he. Taking up the gun, he shot the old wolf through the head. But it is also said the story ends in a different manner. For that one day when Redcap was taking some presents to her grandmother, a wolf met her wanted to mislead her and went straight on and told her grandmother that she had met a wolf who said good day and who looked so hungry out of his great eyes as if he would have eaten her up and she had not been on the high road. So the grandmother said, "We will shut the door and then he cannot get in." Soon after, up came the wolf, who tapped and exclaimed, "I am Little Redcap, grandmother. I have some roast meat for you." But they kept quiet, and did not open the door. So the wolf, after looking several times around the house, at last jumped on the roof, thinking to wait till Little Redcap went home that evening, and then to creep after her and eat her in the darkness. The old woman, however, saw what the villain intended. There stood before the door a large stone trough, and she said to Little Redcap, "Take this bucket, dear. Yesterday I boiled some meat in this water. Now pour it into the stone trough." Then the wolf sniffed the smell of meat, and his mouth watered, and he wished very much to taste. At last he stretched his neck too far over, and he lost his balance, fell down from the roof right into the great trough below, and there he was drowned. So yeah, that's not the Little Red Riding Hood I grew up with. Either of those stories. Okay. So that's nice. We've got that going for us. Let's go back to the beginning. Pick another one. Anybody in chat, feel free. I can't do votes yet because I'm not an affiliate. Hey, Asiki, it's good to see you. But we've got some options. Hey, Jarrett made it in. Snow White and Rose Red. That's right. We're doing V's. Jarrett made it in. Hey, buddy. I sent that back to you. Did you get back that letter? All right. Let's try Snow White and Rose Red first, and then we'll run to Bearskin, hell, who knows after the last time. Holy shit. Is that part of this one? No, I don't think so. Okay. I'm hoping that's not part of this one. All right, V, here we go. Snow White and Rose Red. I need a drink. A poor widow once lived in a little cottage. In front of the cottage was a garden, in which were growing 2 rose trees. One of those bore white roses, and the other red. She had 2 children who resembled the rose tree. One was called Snow White, and the other was called Rose Red. And they were as religious and loving, busy and untiring as any 2 children ever were. Snow White was more gentle and quieter than her sister, who liked better skipping about the fields, seeking flowers, catching summer birds, while Snow White stayed at home with her mother, either helping her in the work or, when that was done, reading aloud. Hey, Jules. We're reading Snow White and Rose Red. We read Little Redcap before, which was not Little Red Riding Hood of your childhood. The 2 children had the greatest affection for one another. They were always seen hand in hand. And should Snow White say to her sister, "We will never separate," the other would reply, "Not while we live," the mother adding, "That which one has, let always share with the other." They constantly ran together in the woods, collecting ripe berries, but not a single animal would have injured them. Quite the reverse. They all felt the great esteem for the young creatures. The hare came to eat parsley from their hands. The deer grazed by their side. The stag bounded past them unheeding. The birds, likewise, did not steer from the bough, but sang in entire security. No mischief befell them. If benighted in the woods, they lay down on the moss to repose and sleep till the morning, and their mother was satisfied as their safety, and felt no fear about them. Once they had spent a night in the wood, and the bright sunrise awoke them, they saw a beautiful child in a snow-white robe, shining like diamonds, sitting close to the spot where they had reposed. She arose when they opened their eyes, and looked kindly at them, but said no word, and passed from their sight into the wood. When the children looked around, they saw that they had been sleeping on the edge of a precipice, and would surely have fallen over if they had gone forward 2 steps further in the darkness. Their mother said the beautiful child must have been an angel who keeps watch over good children. Snow White and Rose Red kept their mother's cottage so clean that it gave pleasure only to look in. In summertime, Rose Red attended to the house, and every morning before her mother awoke, placed by her bed a bouquet which had in it a rose from each of the rose trees. In the wintertime, Snow White was set light to the fire and put on the kettle after polishing it until it was gold for brightness. In the evening, when the snow was falling, her mother would bid her bolt the door, and then, sitting by the hearth, the good widow would read aloud to them from a big book while the little children were spinning. Close by them lay a lamb and a white pigeon with its head tucked under its wing. It was on a perch behind. One evening, as they were sitting cozily together like this, there was a knock at the door, as if someone wished to come in. "Make haste," Rose Red said to her mother. "Open the door, and surely some traveler is seeking shelter." Rose Red accordingly pulled back the bolt, expecting to see some poor man, but it was nothing of the kind. It was a bear that thrust its big black head in the open door. Rose Red cried out and sprang back. The lamb bleated, the dove fluttered his wings, and Snow White hid himself behind her mother's bed. The bear began speaking and said, "Do not be afraid. I will not do any of you any harm. I'm half frozen, would like to warm myself a little by your fire." "Poor bear," the mother replied, "come in and lie by the fire. Only be careful that your hair is not burnt." Then she called Snow White and Rose Red, telling them that the bear was kind and would not harm them. They came as she bade them, and presently the lamb and dove drew near also without fear. "Children," begged the bear, "knock some of the snow off my coat." So they brought a broom and brushed out the bear's coat quite clean. And here's a picture. You can see them brushing the bear. How nice. After that, he stretched himself out by the fire and pleased himself by growling a little, only to show that he was happy and comfortable. Before long, they were all quite good friends, and the children began to play. With their unlooked-for visitor, pulling his thick fur and placing their feet on his back and rolling him over and over. Then they took a slender hazel twig, using it upon his thick coat, and they laughed when he growled. The bear permitted them to amuse themselves in this way, only occasionally calling out when it went a little too far, "Children, spare me an inch of life." When it was night, all were making ready to go to bed. The widow told the bear, "You must stay here and lie by the hearth if you like. You may stay here and lie by the hearth if you like, so that you will be sheltered from the cold and from the bad weather." The offer was accepted. But when the morning came, as day broke in the east, the 2 children let him out, and over the snow he went back into the wood. After this, every evening at the same time the bear would come, lay by the fire, and allowed the children to play with him. So they became quite fond of their curious playmate, and the door was never bolted in the evening until he had appeared. When springtime came, all around began to look bright and green. One morning the bear said to Snow White, "Now I must leave you, and all the summer long I shall not be able to come back." "Where then are you going, dear bear?" asked Snow White. "I have to go in the woods to protect my treasure from the bad dwarves. In wintertime, when the earth is frozen hard, they must remain underground and cannot make their way through. But now that the sunshine has thawed and the earth can come to the surface, and whatever gets into their hands or is brought into their caves seldom, if ever, again sees daylight." Snow White was very sad when she said goodbye to the good-natured beast and unfastened the door that he might go. But in going out, he was caught by a hook in the lintel and a scrap of his fur being torn. Snow White thought there was something shining like gold through the rent, but when he went out so quickly she could not feel certain what it was, and soon he was hidden amongst the trees. One day, the mother sent her children into the wood to pick up sticks. They found a big tree lying on the ground. It had been felled, and towards the roots they noticed something skipping and springing, which they could not make out, as it was sometimes hidden in the grasses. As they came near, they could see it was a dwarf with a shriveled up face and snow-white beard that an ell long. The beard was fixed in a gash in the tree trunk, and the tiny fellow was hopping to and fro like a dog at the end of his string, but he could not manage to free himself. He stared at the children with his red, fiery eyes and called out, "Why are you standing there? Can't you come and try to help me?" "What are you doing there, little fellow?" inquired Rose Red. "Stupid, inquisitive goose," replied the dwarf. "I meant to split the trunk so that I could chop it up for kitchen sticks. Big logs would burn up in the small quantity of food we cook, for people like us do not consume great heaps of food, as you heavy, greedy folk do. But the billhook I driven in, and soon I should have done what I require, but the tool suddenly sprang up from the cleft, and it quickly shot up again and caught my handsome white beard. And here I must stop, for I could not set myself free, you stupid pale-faced creatures. You laugh, do you?" In spite of the dwarf's bad temper, the girls took all possible pains to release the little man, but without avail. The beard could not be moved. It was wedged too tightly. "I will run and get someone else," said Rose Red. "Idiot!" cried the little dwarf. "Who would go and get more people? Already there are too many. Can't you think of something better?" "Don't be so impatient," said Snow White. "I will try to think." She clapped her hands as she discovered a remedy, took out her scissors, and in a moment set the dwarf free by cutting off the end of his beard. Immediately the dwarf felt that he was free and seized up a sack of gold that was hidden amongst the tree roots, and lifting it up, grumbled out, "Clumsy creatures, to cut off a bit of my beautiful beard, of which I'm so proud. I leave the cuckoos to pay you for what you did." Saying this, he swung the sack across his shoulder and went off without even casting a glance at the children. Not long afterwards, the two sisters went to angle in the brook, meaning to catch some fish for dinner. As they were drawing near the water, they perceived something looking like a huge grasshopper springing towards the stream, as if it were going in. They hurried up to see what it might be and found out that it was the dwarf. "Where are you going?" said Rose Red. "Surely you will not jump into the water." "I'm not such a simpleton as that," yelled the little man. "Don't you see that a wretch of a fish is pulling me in?" The dwarf had been sitting there angling on the side of the stream. By ill luck, the wind had entangled his beard in his line. And just afterwards, a big fish took the bait. The unamiable little fellow had not sufficient strength to pull it in, so the fish had advantage and was dragging the dwarf after it. Certainly he caught at every stalk and spray near him, but that did not assist him greatly. He was forced to follow all the twistings of the fish and was perpetually in danger of being drawn into the brook. The girls arrived just in time. They caught a hold of him freely and endeavored to untwist his beard from the line, but in vain. They were too tightly entangled. There was nothing left again but to make use of the scissors. So they were taken out, and the tangled portion of the beard was cut off. When the dwarf noticed what they were about, he exclaimed in great rage, "Is this how you damage my beard? Not content with making it shorter before? Now you are all making it a little still smaller and completely spoiling it. I shall not ever dare to show my face to my friends. I wish you had missed your way and before you took this road." Then he fetched a sack of pearls that lay amongst the rushes, and not saying another word, hobbled off and disappeared behind a large stone. Soon after this, it chanced that the poor widow sent her children to the town to purchase cotton, needles, ribbon, and tape. The way to the town ran over a common, on which every direction large masses of rocks were scattered about. The children's attention were soon attracted to a big bird that hovered in the air. They remarked that, after circling slowly for a time and gradually getting nearer to the ground, it all of a sudden pounced down amongst a mass of rock. I have a feeling what the bird jumped on. Instantly, a heart-rending cry reached their ears, and running quickly to the place, they saw with horror the eagle had seized their former acquaintance, the dwarf, and was just about to carry him off. The kind children did not hesitate for an instant. They took hold of the little man and strove so stoutly with the eagle for possession of his contemplated prey, that after much rough treatment on both sides, the dwarf was left in the hands of the little brave friends, and the eagle took flight. As soon as the little man had in some measure recovered from his alarm, his little squeaky cracked voice was heard saying, "Could you have held me a moral more gently? See my little coat? You have rent and damaged it in fine manner, you clumsy, officious things." Then he picked up a sack of jewels and slipped out of sight behind a piece of rock. The maidens by this time were quite used to his ungrateful, ungracious ways, so they took no notice of it. But when they were on their way home, they made their purchases, and they were ready to return to their happy home. On their way back, suddenly, once more they ran across their dwarf friend. Upon a clear space, he turned out his sack of jewels so that he could count and admire them, for he had not imagined that anybody would at so late hour come across the common. There's a picture of him, the little dwarf dude. Oh, he's got quite a beard. They were pulling on his beard, bro. The setting sun was shining upon the brilliant stones, and their changing hues and sparkling rays caused the children to pause to admire them also. "What are you gazing at?" cried the dwarf, at the same time becoming red with rage. "And what are you just standing for, making ugly faces?" It is probable that he might have proceeded in the same complimentary manner, but suddenly with a great growl was heard beside him, and a big black bear joined the party. Up jumped the dwarf in its extremest terror, but could not get to his hiding place. The bear was too close, so he cried out in very evident anguish, "Dear Mr. Bear, forgive me, I pray. I will render to you all my treasure. Just see those precious stones lying there. Grant me my life. What would you do with such an insignificant little fellow? You would not notice me between your teeth. See those two children? They would be delicate morsels, and are as plump as partridges. I beg of you to take them, Mr. Bear, and let me go." But the bear would not be moved by his speeches. He gave the ill-disposed creature a blow with his paw, and he lay lifeless on the ground. He kilted that dwarf. Dang. Meanwhile, the maidens were running away, making off for homes as well as they could, but all of a sudden they were stopped by a well-known voice that called out, "Snow White, Rose Red, stay! Do not fear, I will accompany you." The bear came towards them, but as he reached their side, suddenly the bearskin slipped to the ground, and there before them was standing a handsome man, completely garmented in gold, who said, "I am a king's son, who was enchanted by a wicked dwarf lying over there. He stole my treasure and compelled me to roam the woods, transformed into a big bear until his death should set me free. Therefore he has received his well-deserved punishment." Sometime afterwards, Snow White married the prince, and Rose Red his brother. They shared between them an enormous treasure which the dwarf had collected in his cave. The old mother spent many happy years with her children. Oh, look, there's the prince. What a weird story. I think the dwarf did recognize the bear. Oh, and should have said like Mr. Prince. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know. Salt, are you still there? Are you still awake? You shouldn't be awake much longer. We'll do one more story here. I think Salty's out there. If you want to choose one, here are some options. And we'll read one more. The Goose Girl, Little Brother and Sister, Hansel and Gretel. Oh, If I Could But Shiver. Little Snow White. Yeah, that's different than the other one. Catherine and Frederick, The Valiant Little Tailor. We read Little Red Cap. Oh, yeah. One vote for Bearskin. One vote for Shiver. Any other votes? How would you pronounce that one? Mother Hole? I'm not going to read it as Mother Hole. I'll tell you that right now. That's nasty. Three Little Men in the Wood. Rumpelstiltskin. Little One Eye, Two Eyes, and Three Eyes. All right, Sikia asked for bearskin before, so let's do bearskin now. And we'll finish up tonight with this one. Yay! All right. Everybody get your warm milk out. Get into bed. Turn down the light. We'll see how this goes here. I'm not sure if it's going to be very good for a bedtime story, but we're going to try. There's a footnote. Okay. There was once upon a time a young fellow who enlisted for a soldier and became so brave and courageous that he always was in the front ranks when it rained the blue beans, which it says in the footnote is small shot. As long as the war lasted, all went well, but when peace had concluded, he received his discharge, and the captain told him he might go where he liked. His parents, meanwhile, had died, and as he had no longer any home to go to, he paid visit to his brothers and asked them to give him shelter until war broke out again. His brothers, however, were too hard-hearted and said, "What could we do with you? We could make nothing of you. See to what you have brought yourself." And so turned a deaf ear. The poor soldier had nothing but his musket left, so he mounted this on his shoulder and set out on a tramp. By and by he came to a great hearth, with nothing on it but a circle of trees, under which he sat down, sorrowfully considering his fate. "I have no money," thought he. "I have learnt nothing but soldiering, and now since peace is concluded, there is no need for me. I see well enough I shall have to starve." All at once he heard a rustling, and he looked around and perceived a stranger standing before him, dressed in a gray coat, who looked very stately, but had an ugly cloven foot. "I know quite well what you need," said this being. "Gold and other possessions you shall have, as much as you can spend. But first I must know whether you are a coward or not, that I may not spend my money foolishly." "A soldier and a coward," replied that other. "That cannot be. You may put me any proof." "Well then," replied the stranger, "look behind you." The soldier turned and saw a huge bear, which eyed him very ferociously. "Oh, he cried he, I will tickle your nose for you, that you shall no longer be able to grumble." And, raising his musket, he shot the bear in the forehead, so that he tumbled on a heap on the ground, and did not stir afterward. Thereupon the stranger said, "I see quite well that you are not wanting in courage, but there is one condition which you must fulfill." "If it does not interfere with my future happiness," said the soldier, who had remarked who it was that addressed him. "If it does not interfere with that, I shall not hesitate." "Then you must see for yourself," said the stranger. "For the next 7 years you must not wash yourself, nor comb your hair or beard, neither must you cut your nails, nor say one paternoster. Then I will give you this coat and mantle, in which you must wear during these 7 years, and if you die within that time, you are mine. But if you live, you are rich and free all your life long." The soldier reflected for a while on his great necessities. In remembering how often he had braved death, he at length consented, and ventured to accept the offer. Thereupon the evil one pulled off the great coat, handed it to the soldier, and said, "If you at any time search in the pockets of your coat when you have it on, you'll always find a handful of money." Then he also pulled off the skin off the bear. "That shall be your cloak and your bed. You must sleep on it, and not dare to lie in any other bed, and on this account you shall be called Bearskin." Immediately the evil one disappeared. The soldier now put on the coat and dipped his hands into the pockets to assure himself of the reality of the transaction. Then he hung the bearskin around him, and he went about the world chuckling at his good luck, and buying whatever suited his fancy, which money he could purchase. For the first years his appearance was not very remarkable. In the second he began to look quite like a monster. His hair covered almost his face. His beard appeared like a piece of dirty cloth. His nails were claws, and his countenance was so covered with dirt that one might have grown cresses if it had sown seed. Whoever looked at him ran away, but because he gave the poor in every place gold coin, they prayed that he might not die during the 7 years. And because he paid liberally everywhere, he found a night's lodging without difficulty. In the 4th year, he came to an inn where the landlord would not take him in, and refused to even give him a place in the stables, lest the horses should be frightened and become restive. However, when the bearskin put his hands in his pocket and drew out full gold ducats, the landlord yielded at the point, gave him a place in the outbuildings, but not till he had promised he would not show himself for fear the inn would gain a bad name. While Bearskin sat by himself in the evening, wishing from his heart that the 7 years were over, he heard in the corner, a loud groan. Now the old soldier had a compassionate heart, so he opened the door and saw an old man weeping violently and wringing his hands. Bearskin stepped nearer, but the old man jumped up and tried to escape. When he recognized a human voice, he let himself be persuaded, and by the kind words and soothings on the part of the old soldier, he had at length disclosed the cause of his distress. His property had dwindled away by degrees, and he and his daughters would have to starve, for he was so poor that he did not have any money to pay the host, and would therefore be put into prison. "If you have no care except that," replied Bearskin, "I have money enough." And causing the landlord to be called, he paid him, and put a full purse of gold besides into the pocket of the old man. The latter, when he saw himself released from his troubles, knew not how to be sufficiently grateful, and said to the soldier, "Come with me. My daughters are wonders of beauty, so choose one of them for your wife. When they hear what you have done for me, they will not refuse you, and you appear to be an uncommon man, but they will soon put you to rights." And here's our old dude right here, and the old man, and the 3 daughters. Apparently they're all hot and stuff. This speech pleased Bearskin, and he went with the old man. As soon as the eldest daughter saw him, she was so terrified at his countenance that she shrieked and ran away. The second one stepped up and looked at him from head to foot, but at last she said, "How can I take a husband who has not a bit of human countenance? The grizzly bear would have pleased me better to have come saw us at once, and gave himself out as a man, for he wore a hussar's hat and had white gloves on besides." But the young daughter said, "Dear father, this must be a good man who has assisted you out of your troubles. If you have promised him a bride for your service, your word must be kept." It was a pity the man's face was covered with dirt and hair, else one would have seen how glad his heart was that these words made him. Bearskin took a ring off his finger, broke it in 2, and gave the youngest daughter 1/2. She kept the other for himself. And on the other half he wrote his name, and on his own he wrote hers, and begged her to preserve it carefully. Thereupon he took leave, saying, "For 3 years longer I will wander about. If I come back again, then we will celebrate our wedding. But if I do not, you are free, for I shall be dead. But pray to God that he will preserve my life." When he was gone, the poor bride clothed herself in black, and whenever she thought of her bridegroom, burst into tears. But from her sisters she received nothing but scorn and mocking. "Pray pay attention when he shakes your hand," said the eldest, "and you will see his beautiful claws." "Take care," said the second. "Bears are fond of sweets, and if you please him, he will eat you up, perhaps." "You must mind and do his will," continued the eldest, "or he'll be growling." And the second daughter said further, "But the wedding will be certainly merry, for bears dance well." The bride kept silence, and would not be drawn from her purpose by all these taunts. And meanwhile Bearskin wandered round the world, doing good where he could, and giving liberally to the poor, for which they had prayed heartily for him. At length the last day of 7 years approached, but Bearskin went and sat down on the hearth beneath a circle of trees. In a very short time the wind whistled, and the evil one presently stood before him, and looked at him with a vexed face. He threw the soldier his old coat, and demanded his gray one back. You have not got so far as that yet, replied Bearskin. You must clean me first. Then the evil one had, whether he liked it or not, to fetch water, wash the old soldier, comb his hair out, and cut his nails. This done, he appeared again like the brave warrior, and indeed was much handsomer than before. As soon as the evil one had disappeared, Bearskin became quite light-hearted, and going to the nearest town, he bought a fine velvet coat, and hired a carriage drawn by 4 white horses, in which he was driven to the house of his bride. Nobody knew him. The father took him for some celebrated general, and led him into the room where his daughters were. He was compelled to sit down between the 2 eldest, and they offered him wine and heaped his plate with the choicest morsels, for they had thought he had never seen anyone so handsome before. But the bride sat opposite to him, dressed in black, neither opening her eyes nor speaking a word. At length the soldier asked the father if he would give him one of his daughters to wife, and immediately the 2 elder sisters arose and ran to their chambers to dress themselves out in their most becoming clothes, for each one thought that she would be chosen. Meanwhile, the stranger, as soon as he found himself alone with his bride, pulled out his half of the ring and threw it into the cup of wine, which he handed across the table. She took it, and as soon as she had drunk it, seeing the half ring lying at the bottom, her heart beat rapidly, and she produced the other half, which she wore around her neck on a riband. She held them together, and they joined each other exactly. And the stranger said, I am your bridegroom, whom you first saw as Bearskin, but through God's mercy I have regained my human form, and I am myself once more. With these words he embraced and kissed her, and at the same time the 2 eldest sisters entered in full costume. As soon as they saw that the very handsome man had fallen to the share of their youngest sister and heard that he was the same as Bearskin, they ran out of the house full of rage and jealousy. The end. I don't know if he had that coat anymore, the infinite money coat. He got a different coat back from the evil one. But apparently he had enough money to buy a velvet suit. So he had some scratch. Oh, Salty, you should be asleep, baby. I hope you are. I love you very, very much. I get to see you Friday. I'm very excited. All right. I think that's it for tonight. Just a quick bedtime story. Let's see who we've got out there to raid tonight. Thank you all for coming down. Have a good night, Grand No Cookies. I hope you're having fun playing with Miss V. We got Megapedia that we could raid. Yeah, I like the evil one too as an NPC. That would be a fun one to read. Good night, V. When are you... Oh, V's not... Gren, when are you streaming again? Megapedia is on. She is on. If you're not following Gren, please follow Gren. They should be streaming very soon. Thursday afternoon. Tomorrow afternoon. All right, let's raid Megapedia then. I'm not sure if I'll be on tomorrow. I might. We'll maybe do another pop-up stream and do some reading streams. Please join the Discord if you haven't and give some suggestions to what you might like to hear. And in the meantime, we will read Megapedia. All right. Thank you all for coming down tonight. Give a like, or start following below. Good night, Ezekiel. I'll see you soon. Make sure you follow in the Discord and post up there. Say hello. It's always good to see you guys. And good night.